Introducing Travel Well podcast series presented by packitup.org.
This is the Travel Well podcast series where we explore and share the stories of perseverance, resilience, and overcoming the challenges of living abroad. I'm your host, Christian Brown, global citizen, writer, and entrepreneur. Let's get into it. You are tuned in to Travel Well podcast, where we sit at the intersection of travel and wellness. This podcast is about the stories of brave souls who have chosen to move outside of their home country to pursue something new. And so today I am with my guest, Donatella.
Hey.
How are you today?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. So let's start out. Let's give the audience kind of a peek into who you are and
Okay.
and your story.
Oh my God. That's so broad. That's so big. Can you be more specific? Like, what do you want to know about me?
Yeah, for sure. So where are you from? And then what prompted you to move here to Paris, France, where we are today?
Okay, yeah. I'm from Washington, D.C. And honestly, I just moved here for grad school. I applied to grad school on a whim right after undergrad because I was like, what's next after graduating? I was just horrified by it. And I wanted to push myself. Like, I already pushed myself living across the country to California. And I was like, the next step is obviously like out of the country. So Paris just seemed like the first option I chose, honestly. Like, there was no real intention behind it, but definitely the best one I made.
Yeah. Super cool. And where do you think you got that courage from to just to move abroad? Because was there any fear? Did you feel any fear surrounding it, or it's all natural?
I don't know. I don't think I felt any fear, really. I think I felt like excitement, maybe a little anxiety, if anything. But I love a spontaneous moment. Like, I love just applying to something and just, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, going with the flow in that kind of way. Like, spontaneity is really everything to me. And so, you know, when I got my acceptance and was able to move here, I was like, oh, okay, so everything's aligned. It's perfect. Like, this is obviously meant to be. I think maybe the only real fear I had was, you know, not knowing anyone out here, not knowing the language, not having community. I think that might have been a little bit much.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I did a poll on my Instagram story a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I asked people, you know, if you had the chance to talk to someone who moved abroad, like, what is a topic that you would be interested in learning about? And the one that had the most votes was building a network, making connections. Mm-hmm. And so, since that was a thought for you, it's been 2 years since you've been here now?
Damn near, yeah.
Damn near 2 years. So, you know, talk about the community that you found here, and like, how were you able to build a community here?
Yeah, honestly, low-key a cop-out, because a lot of my friends here are American. And so I did kind of seek out people who had a similar background and had a similar experience and knew where I was coming from. And, you know, I made a couple from my school, from my university, really like one or two, maybe three. But the majority of my community came from social media. It came from kind of sharing my experience live and in real time, and kind of being very open and navigating this experience, saying, you know what, I'm very new here. I'm looking for anyone who's willing to show me around and kind of help me out. And then, you know, I found people who reached out to me like, hey, like, I'm also new here. Do you want to grab a coffee? And that's really like where all the connections came from for me. And of course, obviously, like, we exposed to each other's network. So like, I met you through my friend Lucia, and I met her at school. So
yeah, what connection away?
Always.
Love that. So I know there have probably been like many challenges that you faced since you've been here. But what's been like a significant challenge that you had to face, and how did you overcome it? Mainly related to just being a expat, like being a foreigner.
Oh God. My first challenge was housing, for sure. Because I told you I applied like very, very fast. The school year had pretty much just started, so I had nowhere to live outside of an Airbnb. And she was charging me crazy, like $700 for the week, and I was like, girl, I was like, what job, what money? And you know, luckily, like, my school had a database that had open housing for people looking for small apartments or looking to live with a family or something. So I got really lucky there. But even now, like, now that I'm done with school and kind of back on that housing hunt, I'm like, not knowing French is such a crutch. And it's such a Achilles heel in the sense that people know that you're a foreigner, so they know that they can kind of, I don't want to say like abuse that, but like take advantage of you in the sense that like you don't know the actual prices, you don't know the housing laws here, so they can kind of get a lot over on you. And so I am thankful that I have French friends now to kind of guide me through that and kind of honestly take the lead and take the role. I feel like it was a very similar thing in LA where if I wanted to look for an apartment, I had to bring a white friend with me. So they could kind of say like, oh yeah, it's actually me looking, it's not her. Because I know a lot of the times when I was looking around for apartments, like I was turned away even though the apartment had been up for like maybe 2 months. And they'd be like, oh, we just gave it to someone else. I'm like, but it's been here forever. And it's back on the market next week. So I'm like, you're obviously lying. Like, yeah, so that was huge. Current obstacle is definitely finding a job as like a native English speaker. And again, no French. Yeah, like I want to stay in Paris, but I'm like, this lack of a language thing. Yeah.
So what advice would you give someone who's like interested in moving abroad? Say someone interested in moving to Paris, but they may feel like a pushback because they don't know French or they don't know anyone. Like, do you think it's still worth it to make that leap even if you don't know anyone or speak the language?
Absolutely, because I feel like at the end of the day, like you don't need the mother tongue to kind of get around a globalized city like Paris. I mean, for the most part, everyone here is bilingual and everyone does know English, whether they want to talk to you or not. And at least very basic English. So it's not hard to get around. And I feel like, you know, I'm fluent in Spanish, so some things kind of come to me a little easier in terms of navigating this language and reading this language. I know that's not the truth for a lot of people, but I don't know. It's an easy city to navigate. It reminds me a lot of New York. I consider Paris to be like New York's French cousin, maybe a little more like bougie. Some higher standards at play. But yeah, I think the language should not be what hinders you from moving abroad because it's easy to learn. There's enough people who speak English globally that it's really not that deep. There's enough expats to kind of network and tap into. Like Facebook is such a huge tool. Instagram is such a huge tool. TikTok is massive before they take it away. Yeah, there's a lot of things to lean on. What was the second part of that question?
I think you answered it.
Okay.
You answered it, yeah. But now I'm curious because I know that there's like this, to me, I feel like there's this universal language of the world. And it's something that you don't really realize until you spend some time abroad. And you realize how powerful of a language English is, and also like how powerful of a reputation that Americans have. Yeah. Even if it's not always the best. Yeah. It's like in certain spaces abroad, just being American gives you privilege.
Absolutely.
Have you had a situation where you felt like that?
Yeah, I definitely think. Oh God, there's so many levels to this. I don't even know if we have time to get all of this.
Yeah, talk about it.
But there's definitely been moments where someone has treated me differently because they didn't realize that I was American. And I think as a Black American, I'm obviously not used to that kind of privilege where, like, people kind of switch up on me once they realize, oh, that's an American accent. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely it is. I'm trying to think because there have been so many random moments. I know there have been moments when someone's asked me for directions, and this is probably, like, the most basic, the most obvious one. It happened to me last night, actually. And they'll approach me in French, and I'll be like, oh, like, I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're saying. Even though, like, now I do. But I'm like, I'm so sorry if I can't help you. Like, oh, you're American. Wow. What do you think? Like, do you like it here? And I'm like, I do. Yeah. And so, like, we kiki about that. But I also have friends who are obviously of a darker complexion than I am and have a completely different experience navigating the city and navigating racism in the city. Which I think is nothing to kind of skirt around because it's definitely prevalent. I think it's a lot of Black Americans' concerns when they think about, like, oh, France is more racist than the U.S. And I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, like, everyone has smoke for Black people. Yeah. And we kind of just have to, like, own that and sit with that and be like, is that going to stop you from exploring the world, like, regardless? And for me, the answer is no. Like, I spent a month in India, and they did treat me differently when they realized that I was American, but they still treated me like I was less than because I was Black. Yeah, which was, again, had totally different levels to it. It was a fascinating month, but I don't know. I spent a month in China where it was very apparent that I was Black and I was treated like I was Black. But then once I opened my mouth and people were like, oh, that's an American accent. They were like, oh, like, I've got questions. Like, how do you feel about the political situation right now? I was like, man, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to get into all that. Like, obviously I hate it, so I'm here. Yeah, no, deadass. But yeah, I think that's, like, just a reoccurring thing that you're going to have to kind of struggle with. it just depends, like, do you have, and I think all of us have the mental fortitude to kind of go with that daily, because we've all faced much worse than someone who has a couple questions about our experience and our day-to-day lives. Like, that's really nothing.
Yeah.
And at this point, I feel like I'm happy to educate, because I'm like, obviously, I've met so many French people who have been like, Black Americans are a novelty to me because everything about you I've seen on TV, like your culture, your music. Like, some people are fascinated by it, some people are obsessed with it. I definitely think it's like a fetish, kind of, in a really weird way.
Yeah.
And, I feel like we're almost treated like the most regular of us are treated like celebrities, because they're like, oh, like, you remind me of Juice. And watching, like, old Tupac Shakur movies. And, it's kind of nuts. And, like, it definitely takes a little getting used to.
Yeah.
Hey, so check this out. I want to take a few seconds to tell you about Blemish. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of a startup called Blemish, based in France. And it's the whole reason I really moved to Paris. And our goal is to unlock access to mental health and care resources globally. So when we do that is through community. We throw events all around the world, and we have a community of people who are committed to bettering their mental health. And as a part of that, we created these bracelets, these Blemish stacking bracelets. And each one has a different positive quote on it. And it's just a daily reminder for you to stay positive, for you to know that you're one connection away, for you to be aware of the growth that you've experienced, to know that you can execute with excellence, to know that you never lose, you either win or you learn. And so these bracelets are a great daily reminder, and they just look good, right? You can stack them, wear them with other bracelets, but the ultimate goal is to give you that daily reminder to keep going, stay positive, and do the work. And so if you go to blemish.com/store right now, you'll be able to see the bracelets, read about them, see some pictures of people wearing them, and you'll be able to get one for you or for a loved one. So go to blemish.com, that's BLIMISH.com/store. You can find all the information that you need. All right, back to the episode.
Yeah. What do you think that does for like a person's confidence or self-esteem? Because I'll say for me, I think one of the issues that I had in the U.S. was like I had this identity crisis, because I had this there was just this image that was portrayed of Black men, mostly in media. So I was influenced a lot by music, a lot by like entertainment. But then moving abroad, I was able to find myself in a totally different environment.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me a bit of freedom, and I think that could be true for other Black Americans as well. But I'm curious on your perspective of like why it's important for I want to say people in general,
Mm-hmm.
but also like Black Americans to experience living outside of America.
Oh my God.
Go ahead. Hard question.
That's so hard.
Because I had this belief that it's like living abroad kind of fast tracks your self-discovery journey.
Absolutely. Because I think you realize the world is like so much bigger than you.
Yeah.
And not to like invalidate your personal experience, not like yours personally, but like, there's just so many other things that happen outside of you. And I think, I think we all kind of remember that when we first came to consciousness around like, maybe it was 4 years old or 5 years old, like we kind of realized like, oh, we're alive. And like, so are other people around us. And I think living abroad is like the exact same thing where you're like, oh, shoot, like it's not just me. There are other people, and like I'm very much awake and I'm very much breathing, and like literally so is everyone else here. Like I think I honestly had that moment again last night where I was on the fucking late night bus home, and the late night bus in Paris, the fucking night bus, horrible, scary, negative 10 out of 10. Like, do not recommend. But last night, for some reason, it was different, and I was like, oh, like, everyone here is alive, like, with me. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, really tired. I want to go home. It's like 2 a.m. And this girl next to me is about to vomit. And I'm like, God forbid she vomits on my Uggs. Like, they've already seen everything. That's the last straw for me. And she's about to vomit. And then everybody on the bus is, like, corralling around her. They're cheering her on. They're holding her up. Someone's got a bag in front of her face. Her boyfriend's giving her kisses all over her face. Like, the drunk guys in front of us are laughing. They're passing her drinks. Like, drink this, drink this. Like, people are opening windows. And I was like, wow, like, this is community. Like, I was like, this is France. And I was like, where would I see this in the U.S., you know? And like, as a Black American, like, I was like, oh, like, everyone just cares. And there is no question of, like, ignoring someone, or, like, it's not about the individual. It is about the community and the collective. And And so that gave me a lot of confidence, like a surge, a reboost, to kind of like navigate life. I'm watching people on their first date on the bus, like holding flowers, laughing at the girl who's about to throw up. Like, I'm looking at a group of friends who are just like kind of battle rapping at the front of the bus in French. I don't know what they're saying, but I'm like, oh my God, like that's so beautiful. Some guy spilled his fucking Fanta on my Uggs, and apologizing profusely. And I was like, wow, like when would someone have given me the time of day to like apologize like that and to like see me and to recognize me? And so I think living abroad as a Black American, it becomes, that confidence comes from like being seen, and obviously not like in a passive sense. I mean like being seen and like acknowledged and like valued in the sense that like you're worthy of that apology and you're worthy of that. What I love about the French, and this is true of like the Black American South as well, is there's just an inclination to say good morning, like no matter what. It's bonjour forever. You know, once in a while forever. And I'm like, wow, like that greeting goes such a long way. But like, you could walk into any store in the U.S. and they could just look at you and walk away, you know? And I'm like, even if you don't really with me like that, like you don't know me like that common courtesy to be seen in that way, to be acknowledged that you are worthy of that morning acknowledgement is so huge. And even just kind of, you know, seeing so many dark-skinned models on the subway, that was like culture shock for me. It was like, whoa. I was like, damn, like I was not expecting that, you know, especially because I was coming from LA at the time, where like biraciality was king. And being a size 0 was king. And I was like, wow, like this is such a different environment and such a different way to kind of embrace everyone's beauty and embrace everyone's uniqueness. And the amount of times that like someone who I would have never approached has come to me like, you are so beautiful, like I just have to talk to you, like what's your name, what's your story, where are you from? And I'm like, oh. me which is so sweet. And that's also like, you know, trauma coming from like a predominantly white institution. When I grew up in like a white high school, so like obviously the guys that I liked at the time weren't looking at me. You know, I was like, damn, I guess I'm just not that fine. And obviously, like, things changed when I got to college, and when I moved abroad, it was, like, a whole different, like, oh, I was like, wow, like, there's so many options. But, yeah, I think it does wonders. It's huge. And I think that's also, like, you know, you spoke about that identity thing, kind of finding yourself here, and that's so important. And, I mean, what better way to find who you are than to put yourself in a comfortable position? You know, like challenge what that result's going to be like and how you're going to act, and look at that reaction and be like, oh, is that who I am? And is that how I do it? Like, yeah. And it's like, I don't know, race is so fascinating across the board, but what kills me and fascinates me is the way that universally everyone just looks down on Black people no matter where we come from. And so we open our mouth and they hear like what accent we have. Because even when people thought that I was like Afro-Latina, they were like talking to me in Spanish, and I was like, oh, which is fine. Like, obviously I speak Spanish, so I can get away with it. But I was like, damn, like, I don't know, so many levels. And people here think I'm biracial, so that's something I've been navigating a lot. So I've been really just kind of processing it. But I honestly, my genuine reaction every single time has been offense. And I can't help that. I don't know. And I'm like, what about it is offensive? Like, nothing's wrong with having like an interracial family or an interracial background. Yeah. But I feel like even the slightest notion of saying, oh, because you look a certain way, you must not be fully Black, it's just so offensive to me, especially when like my family is like civil rights history. And I'm just like, I mean, not that like anyone would know that off the bat, but yeah, it's different. It's like, damn, like, fuck, like, do I have to go harder? Like, is it giving Angela Davis afro? Like, is it giving Black Panther fit the whole time? Like,
that's but
that's so performative. Like, it was like, oh my God. Like, even with my friend, like, he was like, yeah, like, I just thought you were like a revolutionary, like, mixed girl.
Damn.
And I was like, no, like, you know what I mean? He was giving a lot of this. I was like, I got the onk on. Like, I get it. Like, it's a little misleading. And like, I'm just very well educated in our people's history, and I'm very passionate about it. And I grew up in a political family, so I just have a really big understanding of the intersections of Black Americans, and like the behind the veil of, you know, the political system and like what that's like up close and personal. So yeah, like I feel a certain type of way about everything all the time, constantly. And then I get confronted with some bullshit about, are you Black though?
Okay, now you say like that, I can see the offense.
You see what I mean?
For sure.
Like,
for sure.
Yeah.
I have a question. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So is your perception or how your perception and experiences helps you to go beyond, the racial aspects, see the human as a human before, the color skins and
Absolutely, because I feel like at the end of the day, I'm totally forgetting who said, was it God? I don't know. I'm not gonna say who I think said the quote, but whoever said it said that no one is more disrespected than the Black woman. Period and point blank. And I've obviously felt that my entire life. And so for me, it's like it's never a question of race and gender first. I'm always like, well, who are you? And like actions will always speak louder than words in that sense. So I'm always curious to get to know a person, but I feel like, a lot of that same grace is not given to Black women. I feel like, and I'm also queer too, which is, I'm not like visibly queer or anything, but when I meet people and they're like, I can tell how they perceive me based on how they act around me. So when I meet like a certain archetype of like white queer people and they try to sister girl me, I'm like, okay, like I have a reading on how you see me. I have a reading on how you see Black women, period. Like you want a cis girl, that kind of vibe. Like, hey, Humpty, like slay. Like I'm like, okay. Like I get it. And so perceptions like that tell me quite a bit about like, are you going to perceive me as a person, or are you going to perceive me as my gender and my race first? And yeah, I do try not to navigate things in that way, but I do think at the same time that oftentimes stereotypes are just a part of our foundation. Like it's easy to categorize people that way and kind of move based on that. And I've been guilty of it a few times. I'm not going to say I'm uppity, I haven't. But, it's just important to kind of be mindful and try to see beyond. Yeah, because we're all so different.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that awareness is an important step too.
Mm-hmm.
And just not being blind to how you make people feel.
Yeah. A lot of empathy lacking, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people don't really know how to practice empathy in a real way.
You think social media has something to do with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like social media is marketed and has always been marketed as an entertainment app. It's a community app, and like Instagram was about keeping up with their friends and their lives, and same with Facebook was about, connecting with people.
Word.
But I mean, have you ever looked at like someone's video and been like, oh, that's a real person? Like genuinely? Like you watch like our current influencers, our current celebrities, and you're like, oh, like that's cool what they're doing, and like I want to live a life like that. Like, but I'm like, are they real? Like, do they have feelings? And I think that's kind of why, we see a lot of celebrities get bullied online. Like, stan culture is insane. Like, that parasocial relationship that people have to, real people, it's kind of frightening. And I feel like that's not possible without social media. We don't look at people the same way that we do our like in real life friends. Like, I don't know if I could, and I obviously do now because I'm older and I've, seen things. But I'm like, when I was younger and I used to really, really love, like, let's say, Jennifer Lawrence. I don't know why she came to mind first. But I'm like, if Jennifer Lawrence makes a mistake, and I look at her, posting online, and I'm like, can I give her the same grace that I would extend to you? And I know you in real life.
Interesting.
Like, would I look at her and be like, oh, like, damn, maybe she had a reason for making that mistake. Like, maybe I should see where she comes from. Or would I be like, she's a pillar in the community and she's an actress and like, she's got a huge platform. Like, she's got to be more mindful. Like, why am I holding my friends to a higher standard than another real person who's also, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Social media is like so weird in that way.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's also interesting being Gen Z, because you're Gen Z, right? And I'm like the last of the millennial, 96.
Damn, Rona.
Right,
period.
but it's dope because it's like I feel like I'm a part of both generations.
Mm-hmm.
I can connect with the millennials, but also I can connect with Gen Z. But I think there's a honestly a big worry from the older generation. Not even older, just millennials and older. There's a big worry that Gen Z and before they lack soft skills. They lack people skills because it's a generation that grew up with social media.
I think they're right. I think if you look at any of the dating apps, and look at the way that men talk to women, like the soft skills are gone. Like the allure and the magic of flirting and like easing someone into something is gone. Like a straight like social media brain is porn rot. Like I do think, especially people younger than us, I do fear for them. because they don't have third spaces anymore. You know, like
About that.
third spaces. I mean, like physical. Like we used to link up in malls, and I'm still like I'm a 2000s baby, like literally 2000. So I am like on the cusp of like when things were kind of being phased out. But like, you know, kids aren't going to malls anymore to like hang out.
Yeah.
They aren't like just going to the park just to hang out. Like it's to make content. It's like the goals are just different. So we're not connecting in the same way anymore.
So on that note, what has living abroad taught you about yourself that you wouldn't have learned if you stayed in your home country?
I think it first primarily taught me to be resourceful for when I'm like low on funds and I'm like, well, where am I going to eat? What am I going to do? And like, how am I going to get somewhere? Specifically living in France, like obviously this is so unique in the sense that everything is walkable. So like if I can't afford a Metro card, I'm like, you know what? Let me soak it up. It's a 30-minute walk. Like it's really not that serious. I think the biggest lesson that it's taught me and it's still teaching me is that I can literally build community anywhere despite a language barrier. Like there is no shortage of people who are willing to offer their support. And I feel like no matter where you go, you always find your tribe.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just, you know, a big point that holds people back from wanting to travel. But like once you kind of learn that skill to like just put yourself out there and just like connect with people, like that's really all you need. Because what more is there? Like your network is your lifeline, period. And point blank.
That's it. Period. Love that. I love that. Let's give some practical advice to some people who may not understand how to do that, how to put yourself out there, how to utilize social media as a resource. You know, because that's what it is. And you have so many platforms now to where you can, like you said, you can find your tribe. You can go where you feel like the platform best matches your values or your interests.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But and you have like a big following on social media too.
You know, it's horrifying. I hate it. I mean, I love y'all, but I hate it.
Well, it's really cool. It's really cool, but I bet it could be overwhelming sometimes too.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, just for someone who just wants to use social media as a resource to just discover more about the world, discover more cities, discover more people who have similar values and passions. Like, what are some practical steps that you can give?
I think it's important to actively document your experience, whether that be with like photos, live tweeting everything that you're doing. I think that's huge. I think there are a lot more people who are curious than we give credit for, and a lot more people that you know who look up to what you're doing and admire what you're doing. Even if you don't know them like in a very personal way or a personal level, they're looking at you and they're like, oh, like, you know what? I never thought that was possible for me. So I also kind of want to give that a go. Social media to me is powerful in that sense, that we can share so much so quickly and so intimately. You know, a lot of the things that I post are always initially for like 10 people, so I can like update them like, hey, here's what I'm doing. And so I live right now, like, what do y'all think? And it ends up being way more than that. And I'm like, I
don't know if it is taboo or not, but in your experience of moving abroad and coming into France, how did you manage the money part?
And you know what? I'm glad you asked, because I'm not. And that's the harsh truth of it. Like, it's just difficult. I was managing at first because I was a student. So, like, I took out loans from the U.S. to, like, go to school and stay here and, like, supplement my living and everything. Now, and, like, I think we talked about this earlier, like, it's just so hard to get a job as someone who doesn't speak French. And, you know, I feel a little jaded because as an American who was very indoctrinated in that, you know, educational system, everyone's like, oh, like, if you get a master's, like there's no one who won't hire you. There's no level of money that you can't reach. And I realized, like, it's so much more than just a degree now that, like, I should have built different experiences to kind of supplement the degree. And so I'm learning that kind of the hard way right now, where it's like, oh, like, love your resume. You're doing great things, but, like, we need more. We need more internships. We need more experience. Like, I applied to be a barista somewhere, and they're like, oh, you don't have 2 years of experience? And I was like, nigga, I can make a drink.
Right.
Like, you think I can't make a mojito? Are you fucking for real? Like, that's fucking nuts. And I was like, oh, okay. So definitely it's been these last 4 months really hard, damn near impossible. But like, you know, I'm optimistic. I feel good about it. Also a different situation for me too, because I am kind of like somewhat of an influencer. I hate saying that. But like, you know, like I have income coming from different streams. It's not consistent, which is what I don't like. I really want like a consistency of income that I can like rely on. And like I make paintings, like I do commissions here and there, but like that's when I feel like it. That's on my time, which like is not a real way to live right now, but it should be. So yeah, babe, it's hard. That's all I would say to that. Like that's, ugh.
It's real.
Real as fuck. Like people don't talk about it, but it's like if you don't have a rich family member or like a rich background and someone who can supplement your living while you live here, like the fuck are you doing? Like for real.
It's gonna be hard. Yeah, it's gonna be some struggle there for sure.
For sure. And I'm like, I'm not opposed to struggle. Like I romanticized it a lot when I was living in New York at like 19 and like had nothing. And I was like, oh, like I can have a cup of brown rice and like, you know, some budgets and pepper and then go about my day. Like, you know, and I think also this is where community comes in for me too, where it's like, oh, if I know enough people who work at like my local restaurant or my local cafe or my local Starbucks, I've always gotten a free meal. Because I'm like, hey, fam, like, it's me again. What's up? Like, can you help a girl? But that's a part of community building. That's a part of networking. That's a part of, like, you know, building a family abroad. Like, my favorite thing to do every time I move somewhere is to establish, like, this is my point of rest. Like, if I go into this cafe, if I go into this, like, coffee shop, these people are going to know my name. They're going to know my order. It's going to take maybe a month or two. They'll be like, oh, hey, Z, hey, girl. I'll be like, hey guys. Like, you got me ready? It's 8:30. Like, and they know, and I honestly just live for that. That's my thing. Like, going to Holly Belly and seeing all my friends who work there now, because, like, I've been there so often, they all know, like, you want 3 London Fog lattes? And I was like, yes, I should cook one with oat milk. Like, I live for that feeling, and I will chase that feeling everywhere. And so that's why, like, not having a whole lot of money doesn't scare me, because I'm like, you know what? My people who work in the service industry have my back.
Yeah, and that goes back to the resourcefulness you were talking about. You know?
Always. And that's why, low-key, like, my biggest flag for leading people is when they're disrespectful for people who work in, like, service, like, work as waiters, who work as, why am I thinking New Jersey and, like, people who pump gas? That's so random. No, very random. But, like, people who, like, work, you know, doing the jobs that we kind of, a lot of people think less than. Like, when you're with those people, I cannot be around you. Because, you know, I've done a couple of those jobs. Like, I used to work retail. And I have people come in who were so disrespectful and just, like, so rude. And I'm like, I cannot imagine treating someone this way. But that just also goes back to, like, not seeing them as a person. And yeah, of course.
So now that you've been here living abroad for 2 years, how do you see your experiences affecting your future plans?
I'm definitely thinking with like a more globalized perspective in line. Like I realized I definitely don't want to leave anyone out. Like I want to make sure that the people I'm talking to, it touches everyone and not just like Americans. Like I want eventually French people to look at my content and be like, oh, okay, no, like I identify, like I've been there, like I get it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like you did it. Yeah, I don't know. I just want to be able to literally and figuratively like speak everyone's language. Because I feel like there's just no reason that we should ice each other out in that way. Yeah.
I love that inclusivity.
Absolutely. Always. Huge.
Lovely. Well, cool. We're going to finish it out with the rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You ready?
Oh, God, yeah.
First, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite local dish?
Oh, God. Crepes?
Okay.
That's such a cop out. I'm so sorry.
What's the one app that you can't live without?
Oh, God, Twitter.
What morning or night person?
Morning.
One word to describe your first day abroad.
Oh, God. Aligned.
Very nice.
Yeah, because I kind of hate.
Yeah, lovely.
Story. It was there.
Lovely. Well, that was dope. Super happy we got to do this conversation.
Yeah,
thank you for giving me your time.
Yeah.
Giving the audience your time. I hope you all enjoyed. There was a lot here, a lot to take away. So again, thank you, and let people know how they can find you online.
Oh yeah. Thank you for having me. So happy to do this with you. And yeah, so my Instagram is J.Donatella, kind of like the Ninja Turtle, but with an A. And honestly, all my socials are the same. So Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok, before it goes away, it's all J Donatella and some variation.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and see you all on the next episode. Peace.
Bye.